the first question that I want to ask is broad, and it's open for any of you. But you all have very different set of skills. You focus on different things in the real estate market. What are the trends that you're seeing in the real estate market from your specific point of view? That could be like how you've seen it changed or what you're seeing now happening in the country. It should be good.
Hi. Hello to everyone. Nice to meet you guys. Well, thank you to Good Life for the invitation. And responding to that question, actually, it's very interesting to see the trends right now in El Salvador because you can see people, companies investing in very, very different types of projects. Maybe the most popular ones are the tourist and residential focused projects, but we have clients from different countries, and for example, they are investing in health and wellness projects too. And that is very interesting because a few years ago, you can only see that, for example, in Costa Rica or other countries in South America. But right now in El Salvador, it's getting very, very, very interesting. There are some new brands for automotives, from ships, and from different types of industrial projects that are also investing in El Salvador. So it's a very wide open range of potential here in El Salvador right now. But if we have to focus on two, that would be residential and tourist projects.
Okay. You want to answer?
Yes. Hi, everybody. So the thing is that it's actually what is really going on in the coastal area. It's more about touristic, right? And because we don't have yet that connection between areas like El Zonte with other beach. We have little communities have been creating and trying to get everything by themselves, and they are more focused in stuff like wellness and stuff like a place to relax and not really that type of development that we have, for example, in El Tunco, where it's more active, right? So in the coastal area, the touristic part and the residential part are the ones that are really, is what really people are trying to invest. And the model that you will find is small hotels, because we don't have yet that type of tourism that will fill 100 keys like big franchise, right? So it's more about small hotels where have more amenities that are related to wellness and trying to relax around your area, because that's what we offer right now. So it's important to know that not only those two, but the model is, there is a model for that will work right now when it comes to the amount of rooms that will make the project right for our market right now.
What's the number he asked?
Okay, it will depend, but I would say that mostly like from 12 to 24 rooms will be like good enough to have like a 80, from 65 to 85% occupancy, right? That will be like the right number. So when it comes to more rooms, it will be interesting to study the area, the surroundings, the connections between the areas, so we can get more rooms, right? That will have enough occupancy to make it a good business.
Okay. Well, good morning, everyone. From my point of view, as an attorney, yes, property transfer has gone up quite a lot in the recent years, and also we have been backed up by government policies that are going along the way. The government offices in charge or related to real estate, they're improving a lot their procedures, and we're also having the government investing like in roads and more infrastructure for all these developments, especially in this area in the coast.
You kind of see two separate things happening in the real estate market from my point of view. One is the return of Salvadorans that have been living in the U.S., some of them to move back here permanently, a lot of them just to invest. And so while they were also interested in the beaches in the capital city, but a lot of them are interested in the areas where they originally came from. So you see an investment pretty spread throughout the country because of that, because they have roots in different communities. And so sometimes people are surprised that even in these far-flung places that property prices are rising at the pace that they're rising. But you have this huge wave of people returning, people who, 5-10 years ago were afraid to even visit El Salvador because of the memories they had, are coming back to buy and with long-term plans to move back here. So you have that on one hand. On the other hand, you have the wave of tourism. A big component of that is the Bitcoin community, but you also have, just because of the deluge of press about El Salvador over the last 3 or 4 years, even people that aren't interested in Bitcoin have seen these articles with the beautiful beaches and the progress that's happening here, the safety. And so you have tourists from around the world and expats from around the world that are looking, some to buy vacation homes, but a lot of people looking to actually move and live here and start a life here and feel, like there's more opportunity here than there is in Europe or in the US. And so you see those people primarily focused on the coastal areas or San Salvador. And a little bit now you're starting to see they're looking in the mountain areas where the climate is kind of pretty mild year-round. Like everything in real estate, it's location, location, location. And I would say El Zonte, because it's so beautiful, because it was the epicenter of everything with Bitcoin, it's probably the most expensive place per square foot in the country right now. So a lot of people that are initially interested in El Zonte, if that's out of their price range, they're looking in the surrounding coastal communities. The great thing is there was a lot of these communities that you would never even think about buying something in 2 or 3 years ago because they're controlled by the gangs. Now they're open for renovation and breathing new life into these communities. And so you can go outside of El Zonte 10, 15 minutes and often get twice as much property for your money as you would get here in El Zonte. So it just depends. Some people want to be here, but some people would rather be a little further out and get more for their money. And so I feel like, you see this kind of broad-based growth in real estate and a ton of stuff coming to market, ton of stuff being built, but it seems like the demand kind of sucks it up quicker than they can build it.
Mike, because you have the mic, I'm going to ask you the next question. You purchased property here for the first time a long time ago, and a lot has changed since then. But for some of the first-time buyers in the room or people interested in purchasing property, what are some of the expectations they should have? Because obviously El Salvador, we don't have an MLS. It's a very different process than it is in the U.S. or Canada. So set the expectations for first-time buyers here?
Sure. Well, I would put it in 2 categories. One is if you're buying a new build or a pre-build, like in a condo development, that's going to be more like you're used to maybe dealing with in the U.S. You'll put a deposit down, you'll have a payment schedule, and they'll kind of have all the legal work, everything lined out. If you're buying an individual property, a single-family home, you just need to make sure that the titling is all done. They have a good legal structure in El Salvador, but what you'll often find is people just haven't kept up with what the filings they were required to do. And so you'll have a deal struck and you'll be ready, and then all of a sudden they'll realize they have some stuff they have to clear up. And we just bought a property last week that we actually made an offer on over a year ago. And it was this long process. It was owned by a nonprofit, and the nonprofit's papers were no longer valid here, and they had to reform it. And that was kind of what I expected going into it because I've done so many things here, so it didn't surprise me. So you just need to be kind of more flexible if you're going to buy a single family home. Now, I've had other deals that just go right through and there are no problems. There's no escrow in El Salvador, so that's something that can kind of freak people out. If you're coming from the U.S. or I think most places in the world, you're used to having an escrow account where you put a deposit down, and during the buying process, those funds are secured by a third party. Here, you can make like a promesa de venta where you're basically promising to buy and put a deposit, but even those, I've seen a lot of those not be very hard to enforce, and there'll be issues with those. So it's more when you come down to actually sign the papers, and you pay and sign in the same day. So you could literally go out if the seller had all their ducks in a row. You could literally go out and today see a property and make the deal today if they were ready to go. It can go very fast, but there is kind of the process. So just be patient and realize it's not your real estate agent's fault. They've they've often, done as much work ahead of time as they can, but a lot of times the sellers don't realize that they have these issues until they go to get clearance from the government to be able to sell, because you have to kind of clear there's no tax liens or anything on it. So is that the things you wanted me to cover?
Yeah, that's great. Actually, it's a good segue. Did you want to say something?
Yes.
Okay.
Why, adding to what Mike said, that's why in our company we have a method of analysis before anyone wants to purchase a property. Mostly if they want to invest on that, right? That's the first thing that we do. We do what we call a cadastral type of research, because we know that in rural areas like here, the deeds, they don't have the exact description according to what the property looks like in physically, right? So we go through all that process, so make sure that the investor knows that if there's going to be a trouble, because you see all these rural properties here, sometimes they just put their fences right next to the other, and you never know, like topographically, if it's mine or it's neighbors, right? So we start to establish all that, so we get to know, so the investor knows what he's going to purchase, and if he's going to have all this trouble, how long is it going to take to solve this, right? Or if it's the kind of trouble that will make it hard to register at the registration office. That's the first step that we take, just to make sure that then we go through the more technical part, which is like, if you want to invest like in a commercial type of project, that could be a little bit different from a housing for an individual family, you have to know that a lot of regulations are that in the country, that this country has as much regulations as any country in the world, right? When it comes to environment, when it comes to development, when it comes to municipality rulings, all these things that you have to know before you purchase, because it's important that you have the whole picture when it's coming to come to develop your property and become your idea to make it come true, right? So you have to know that, for example, we don't have in these areas urbanistic type of facilities. So sometimes you have to invest in those to make your project come true.
Can you specify urbanistic facilities?
Okay, sewage water, drinking water, roads, and there are regulations for roads that are applied in San Salvador that have to be applied here. So you have to become you have to get all when it comes to a big project, for example, in a housing project, you have to get all the facilities and fulfill all those regulations that we have for urban areas here. So you have to know all this before investing, just to make sure that you have the whole picture, and that's what we do. We try to give them advice so you approach this with the right steps, and you get to know the whole picture and how long is it going to take to develop your idea.
Because you have the mic now, let me ask you one more question. When it comes to the permitting process, we get this question a lot from people who want to build, whether it's a single family home or they want to build a small hotel or a residential property. Just give us a quick summary of the permitting process here. How long does it take? Is it hard? those things.
Okay, you have to know that because the conditions that we have here, we can say that it will be harder than in urban areas like San Salvador, because the same regulation will apply to urban areas for a housing project, for example. The touristic project, like hotels, they tend to be not as strict because people don't live there, right? But when it comes to housing project, people is going to live there. So you have to get all the accommodations as any other type of urbanistic project. So it will take, the time it will depend on how big it is the project, how we approach all these things that you explained before, how we're going to handle all these drinking water, sewage water, land use, how we're going to approach it. That's why in our company what we do is that we try to give them the whole picture so they know, okay, to make this idea feasible, it will take a year, for example, 6 months. If you want to make it bigger, it will take more. So maybe we could go like little steps, right? Because we have all regulations, like I said before, in any other country, mostly environmental. So to answer your question, it will depend. But our work is to try to make it easier by knowing the type of challenges that you're going to have in areas like this, where you don't have all this that I explained before.
That's an answer I use a lot. Like, it depends, because a lot of people ask me, well, what's the pricing like? And, lots of different questions. And I'm always like, well, it really depends on the area you're looking for. It really depends on the amenities that you require, the kind of business you want to run. So it can be very case-by-case basis. So, Rafa, I have a question for you about, we get a lot of buyers saying that they want to build their dream home here. What's your approach with these clients who want to purchase a property and build their dream home? Is it possible? What are the things they need to think about when doing so? And you can maybe talk a little bit about some of the architecture trends you're seeing too.
Of course. Of course it's possible to build your dream house. It all depends on two factors. The first one, as in any other place, is the budget that you have to build that house. A good part is that right now in El Salvador we have access to a different type of materials and finishes and fixtures for your house. So it's very easy to get what probably you've been dreaming on. It all depends on that budget. And first, the amount of money you're going to spend on the property, and then the other amount that you're going to spend on the building your house, right? What you have to consider is that with, especially with the design, that you have to hire, or it's good to hire the different engineerings that are going to participate in that design, because it's not only us, the architects, but you have to take the structural engineer, which is, by the way, very important because we have very different type of soils here in El Salvador. It all depends if you're building in the mountain, because we have a lot of organic material in soils over there. Here at the beach is very different, and we have, that we have volcanoes, and we have to take the earthquakes into consideration. Not to be scared of. We are very used to that. We don't have too much scary earthquakes regularly, just small ones, and you practically don't even feel them. But you have to take that into account. The electrical engineer, the hydraulic engineer, probably they're gonna ask. Sometimes you have to. Well, that is his expertise, but in the permits process, probably they're gonna ask for the Ministry of Environment permit, and it's for a house it's not that complicated. It's more for big developments or other type of companies, but you have to take that into account. And just have the right advice for the right people. I know that all of this is something that you probably consider in your homes, in your countries, and we're not that far of that. Just you have to have the right team. Because if you have the strongest team, your project it's going to have less complications, and you're going to have the best possible project. And in terms of trends, well, it all depends, because right now, like, modern style houses are very in trend right now. But most of the people come here also because of the architecture that we have here in El Salvador and in the region. For example, our colonial style from Central America is very different from colonial style in United States. So a lot of the people like that because the use of the materials, the use of the wood, the use of different type of finishes that you usually don't see in other places. But it all depends. Most of the architects are going to try to receive your idea and try to conceptualizing in a modern proposal, and it all depends on the wishes, so on your wish list to make the right design.
Thanks, Rafa. Mm-hmm. And average construction costs right now? I know it depends on finishes and things, but could you give a range of?
Yeah, for example, we just designed 4 houses at Costa del Sol, and we're designing the average cost. It was like $1,000 per square meter. And that is considering, as I was saying, very nice finishes, very good electrical installations, air conditioning, very good hydraulic system and fixtures, all the pumping equipment and all that. So that can be an average with good finishes. Of course, you can reach very lower than that and still have a very nice proposal. But it all depends on the looks that you want for your house, right? And of course, it can be higher than that too. But that can be a nice approximate.
Okay, great. Mm-hmm. Miguel, I'm going to pass the mic to you. So many of you might already have experience with purchasing property here, and so this is old news to you, but I really want Miguel quickly to summarize the legal process, especially for a foreigner, for purchasing property in El Salvador, some of the contractual agreements you would sign, paperwork you would need, documents you would need. Yeah.
Okay. Once you have settled for a specific property you want to buy, the first thing a foreigner needs to have is their NIT. Their NIT is the local tax ID. You get it from the Treasury Ministry, the Ministerio de Hacienda, and after that, we need to see into the title. The first thing is to make a quick due diligence. We have here in El Salvador a centralized record office from the government where all real estate has been registered. So a quick due diligence to see whether the property has any troubles, perhaps mortgage, perhaps any kind of encumbrance, or there's a legal suit over the property. So that needs to be sorted out first. Then it comes to whether the negotiation between the buyer and the seller. In many cases, as Mike told you, you can buy the property right away if everything's okay. But in some cases, properties do have trouble, or the seller has some kind of trouble that needs to be sorted out. So in that cases, what we do, we sign a previous contract that is called a promise to sell contract, or promesa de venta in Spanish, in where we set up the conditions, the final purchase price, we set a time frame on which each party commits to fulfill their obligations. And once everything has been sorted out, then we proceed to sign the final purchase agreement. It's going to be your deed, and that document needs to go to the National Registration Center. That is the government offices that has all the official real estate records. And once the land has been, your title deed has been registered, then when we close the final contract. That's it.
And can you talk about the penalty system here, because there is no escrow for people who are not familiar with that in the promise of sale?
Yeah. In the promise to sell contract, as I told you, we set a time frame for each party to fulfill their obligations under the contract. If a party fails to fulfill their commitments, then in most cases, these contracts do have a penalty. If you're on the buying side, when comes the date for the final purchase to be signed, and you are not ready to pay the money or fulfill any of your contract obligations, in that case, you're entitled for a penalty. In most cases, you lose your deposit. And the other way around. If the seller, in any circumstance, he doesn't fulfill his obligation to have the land trouble-free for selling, or he simply backtracks from the final purchase agreement, then what is common use is that the buyer gets his deposit back plus 100% as a penalty. So that's we call in Spanish the arras dobladas. So you double the amount you give as a deposit. Again, these contracts, they can be legally enforced, but you must go to court. So in those cases, yeah, I must be honest, a court case can go for 2 or 3 years. So what is very important is to get trust between buyer and seller, be clear on what's going to be needed for the final purchase to be signed before getting into any contract, any promise to sell contract without knowing exactly where you are heading to.
Okay, thanks. I really want to leave it open for questions, so I'm just going to ask one more question to everybody here, and then I'll open it up for the audience. You guys have questions, yeah? One question that I want to ask is, why, from your point of view, should people consider investing in El Salvador? I mean, it could be from a legal perspective and some of the laws that the government is enforcing that makes it easier, or from a beauty perspective, architecture perspective, you know, like building on the beach or whatnot. But why should people consider investing their money here?
Okay. For my legal perspective is we have a very strong legal system. We have this office, the centralized records for real estate. So even if you lose your deed, you can always get a new one. Also, we have a strong financial system. We are Bitcoin embracing is bigger each time. There's legal backing for Bitcoin as a legal tender purchase media. So yeah, we have a strong body. Government is moving forward to incentivize investment. Right now, there are some tax incentives for expats for all their money who they're bringing into the country. Right now, it's tax exempt, so that's a big plus for investors.
Okay, from the architecture and development point of view, I think it's going to be exciting in the next coming years because not only the private companies, international companies are investing here in El Salvador. Like, for example, we just opened the Google offices in Zona Rosa, and there's a lot of very recognized companies investing here in El Salvador. But also the government is making very good steps, and because we have relations with different companies and engineers, we know that the type of projects that are coming to El Salvador. For example, a lot of projects in communication and transportation, which are gonna help the things get even better in El Salvador, because you're gonna be able to connect the western and the eastern part of El Salvador, also the south and the north, and you know that we're small. And you can be in the mountains in 30 minutes and another part or another type of beach in another 30 minutes. But now it's going to be even easier to transport materials and personnel and different type of things. So it's going to be even better in the next coming years.
I would encourage people to look at it more from a lifestyle point of view. Like, is this something, do you want to move to an environment like this, or do you want to have a plan B or a place that, you know, if where you're living in the US or Europe, if you feel like it's going a direction you don't want to go, you have, you know, a place you can pull the parachute, and you have a place that you know that you can land and that you'll be comfortable and want to be in. El Salvador is definitely an ascendant country right now. There's a lot of positivity. There's great things that are happening here. There's people flocking from around the world, and it's an exciting place to live. And so I would consider it more from that point of view. You know, and obviously that helps real estate values. There continues to be more demand than supply, and I don't see that changing, you know, anytime in the near future. I think that, you know, an investment-wise, it will be a wise investment, but I wouldn't look at it just for that. I would look at it more of, this is a place that you want to make a significant part of your life. And there's a lot of conveniences, especially for those that are from North America, of being in the same time zone. So if you're still needing to run a company or work remotely, you're in the same time zone, which if you've ever tried to work remotely from a place where the days and nights are reversed, you realize what a huge benefit that is to be on the same time zone of where you're working. The other thing is it's so close to the US or Canada to get back to for meetings or visit family. And so there's a lot of things that just make El Salvador very convenient.
I gotta say that I like Mike's approach, because it's more about lifestyle. It's more about how this is a great country. Our people is great. You know, we're very friendly, and he's more into how making a living here. It's comfortable. It's nice. To be honest, it's nice. But my part is more technical. That's what I do. So I will say that tourists are growing in 2 digits right now every year. This is huge. We have more and more tourists. It's the second country with more growth on tourism in the country. That means a lot to us, because we didn't used to have that not that long ago, right? We just had little spots where people used to come, they used to love, they have great communities like El Sonte, but now it's everywhere. And one more thing that Mike said that is important is that we have 1/3 of our population living out overseas, and they're coming excited to come here, invest, and get back into their roots. And they have a lot of they spend a lot of money here because they love it here. It's great for them to come and spend their money. So this opens a lot of chances for touristic projects, a lot. But it's right for you guys to know that there is a model right now that will apply, it will grow with time for sure, because we're growing so fast in tourism. But what I see in this country is that it's a great place to start investing in tourism, because the country is there. I think the government that we have is really trying to find a way to make this country better, right? And the first step they are taking is touristic, right? Then they will probably move to other type of industries or any other type of economical activities that will make this country grow. But tourism is what they're trying to really push right now. So touristic type of investments will really be very attractive for you with the right model.
Okay, thank you guys. Thanks so much for your answers and insights. We're going to open it up for questions now. Chimbera will pass the mic around to whoever has a question. So, and in the back, I hope you guys can hear us. If you have questions back there, please let us know.
What does it take to establish a residency here?
Maybe we'll repeat it.
Okay. It depends mostly on what your income source will be. Most expats go for the self-employed residency, which is the simplest and most straightforward. All you need to provide a valid passport and your local criminal records, or the criminal records from the place you have been living the last 6 months. It's also important that if you have arrived in the country as a tourist, that you haven't overextended your tourist visa, because in case you're going to get a fine. Then you can also apply for the rentist or a pensioner's residency. In that case, you need to provide evidence of your income, and you have to open a local bank account, and you also need to provide evidence that you are receiving your income into a local bank account. There's also the investors or business type residency where you open a local business. You set up a corporation, but in that case, I only recommend that type of residency just if you are really investing or open a company here for commercial purposes. Why? Because once you open a corporation here in the country, it's pretty straightforward. It's very easy, as a matter of fact, but there's a catch. You need to make tax declarations every month. We have the IVA, which is the equivalent of the VAT in other countries, and you will need an accountant to help you. You will need to have fiscal balances, and the accounting can get expensive along the way. So I know there's some people who misguide foreigners to apply for a residency by setting up a business. It's not necessary. If you can work by yourself, you need to only provide your criminal records, which is the most straightforward one.
Just to follow up, so in El Salvador, as a tourist, you get a 180-day tourist visa when you come. And so if you're not earning income in the country, if you're not going to be working, a lot of people will just stay on tourist visa, and they want to take a trip every 6 months anyways. And so you only have to be out of the country for a few days, and then you can renew that. So there are a lot of people that will do that initially, and then longer term, they decide if they want to go through the residency process or not.
Also, there's a catch for the residency. Residencies are granted for 1 year term, but you need to live in the country. Okay, you need to live in the country you only can be away from the country not longer than 90 days. So if you're out of the country more than 90 days, you're going to get your residency revoked and you will need to reapply for a residency from scratch. What's the downside if you lose your residency? And you can say, okay, I can reapply for a new one. Yes, you can. But most people are looking for a permanent residency. For the permanent residency, you need to live 4 straight years in the country. Then you can have a permanent residency which are granted for 5-year terms. And with a permanent residency, you can be away from the country more than 1 year. So a couple of years ago, the immigration office wasn't very, how can I say it? It wasn't very keen on looking after expats living in the country, but now, yes, they are investigating, and now they know for people who are overextended their 90-day out of the country.
180 days.
No, 90 days for being outside. Once you get a residency, you only can be 90 days. I recently got a client who had his residency revoked because he overstayed the 90-day rule. So keep in mind that in most cases, tourists, they apply for the 180-day visa. They can extend it for another 180 days. And then what they can do is fly out of the country for a week or two and then re-enter the country. And then they get a new visa.
Another question?
Thanks. For the 4 years that you're on the residency, is it every year you're only allowed to be outside the country for 90 days per year for each 4 years?
That's right.
That's
90 days for each year term.
For each year term. Okay.
Just want to ask, have you ever had an experience with working with aircrete and like building domes in developments here? What's the sort of complications around that?
I'm sorry, to building?
With aircrete?
Air crates?
Yeah.
A crate.
It's a concrete product with air, with like a soapy air solution pumped into it. There's people building them all over the world.
You score me a goal with that one, actually. No, not too much experience with it. Actually,
So it's a self-builded dome home made out of concrete blocks.
of concrete blocks. Yeah, we have very different type of construction systems, and we build a lot with concrete cast in place, and it all depends on the company that are specialized in that type of construction, but usually we make the molding for that, and construction with concrete blocks, it's the usual here in El Salvador. Yeah.
Sure. If someone was to do like a self-build here, where they buy the land and do that with a team of people here, what would be the complications around that, to do with the laws around building and?
No, you most of the time, well, all of the times you have to pass by the permit process and all the different stages in the for building your house, because if not, you can have a penalty from the municipality or the planification office. But that is a good part right now that, for example, municipalities, if you're building less than 50 square meters, for example, you can do it directly with the municipality. And I was in a meeting 2 days ago with them, for example, in the Chiltupan municipality, and they were surprisingly open to help. And that didn't happen a couple of years ago. And now they are very willing to help you with your projects, depending on and it doesn't matter the type of project you're doing, they're very helping you with that.
Awesome, thank you.
Can you tell us something about the taxes involved when buying a property, and is there any way? Sorry, can you tell us about the taxes involved in buying a property here, and is there any way around that?
Well, yeah. Taxes are, you get charged 3% over, well, when you buy a property, the first $28,500 are tax exempt, which is a relatively small amount. After that, you get charged 3% of the purchase price. There's some technicalities if to get around the tax. Mostly the purchase tax for property, the property transfer tax is pretty much unavoidable, just like death. But there's a way to lower the tax down if you can create to make like a fictional legal separation of the land between what is the most basic property right and the right to use the property. We call that usufructo in Spanish. So this usufructo is tax exempt, but you can't avoid the 100% of the tax. So yes, bear in mind that it's mostly 3%.
And I don't know, Miguel, if you mentioned it, but there are no property taxes here in El Salvador.
No, we don't have. We just have the registration fees, which depend also on the amount you're paying for the property, but we don't get yearly property tax. You're gonna basically get small taxes, which are municipal fees, but just for municipal service like public lighting or garbage disposal and everything like that, road keeping. But there's no property tax, as you know it in other countries here. We don't have it.
We always joke with Mike how much taxes he paid for his house in California comparing to here, you know. It's crazy. You have a question?
Yeah, I've got loads of questions. I've been in El Salvador for 1 week, so I've been asking a lot of questions. So I've lost my voice, so I hope you can hear me. The first question I want to ask, just on the taxes, could you maybe just elaborate a little bit more in terms of how Bitcoin is incorporated with that and buying property in Bitcoin and tax-free incentives in the Bitcoin economy?
Sorry, didn't catch you.
Okay. Just on the question of taxes, obviously there's some tax incentives for Bitcoin, the Bitcoin economy. So in terms of buying property with Bitcoin and property taxes, is there any advantages?
Actually, there are no difference whether you buy on Bitcoin or in US dollars. Tax incentives for Bitcoins are mainly for investment, but not for property purchase.
Mike, can you fix
The one thing that people confuse sometimes, so there's no taxes on the appreciation of Bitcoin. So if you are holding Bitcoin in El Salvador, say you bought it at 10,000 and when you're buying the property at 90,000, they're not going to tax you on those capital gains. If you're a US citizen, they will definitely want you to report those and come after you. For people in other parts of the world, if you've moved your legal residency out of your home country, you can get away from paying those capital gains taxes. So that's the one advantage that comes from paying with Bitcoin, which is not for US citizens, but pretty much everybody else in the world.
Thank you. Okay, next question is to every panel member. Right, where are you investing your money right now in property in El Salvador? Okay, each of you. Let's hear it.
Was the question
Every single one of you, where are you investing your money in El Salvador in terms of real estate?
Real estate?
Yeah, one market.
What about if we don't want you as our neighbor?
When you get to know me, you'll want me as your neighbor, I promise you.
For me, primarily in El Zonte.
In my case, in real estate at the beach, beach houses development.
I'll say real estate in general. Every part of the country, as Mike said, is going up. Not only the beach. I have some experience with expats who are buying coffee farms. So yeah, in the agricultural areas, there's a good investment in that.
I would say that the beach area will be, but both beach areas and Salvador to real estate is a good. It's like right now, like never before.
I'll tell you what I would love to have. I would love to have a house in the mountains, like a cabin or something, because it's wonderful living at the beach, but it gets hot, so it's nice to have a place where you can kind of retreat for the weekend or something at cooler elevation. So that would be a dream purchase. I think do you want to, maybe we can do one more question and then we'll wrap it up. Gord, we'll get to you though.
Well, related to beach houses and development on the coast, is there any development plan, like infrastructure, parkings? Because I think it's a big problem, no, for this development.
Okay, here's the thing. The government is really trying to get sort of city developed, right? They have a plan that goes all the way to Conchalillo right now, but it's more about trying to get investors. So what they're planning to do is roads, right? Because we have no actual roads or roads that will be able to transfer people from places, right? As far as I know, there is no such as an urban planning that will say that you have like parking spaces. Right now, this country is mostly about making things easier to invest, right? We haven't reached that part where it's about making the city or the coastal area great to be there. We have to move forward with getting people around, having connections. Mostly it's about roads, about trying to get bicycles to come freely from La Libertad to this place, for example. That's what they're going to focus on. And then probably will come all that. Maybe with the plans that they have, they might be able to fix some places, like you said before, like parking places. But I don't think that in the next 3-4 years, it's more about getting the infrastructure just to move around freely and getting to know for example, people are trying to, will eventually from San Salvador come and live in this area, something that is not happening right now. People that work in San Salvador live in San Salvador, but they're trying with this road that people will probably move here, right? So it's more about moving than making, giving facilities, like you said.